So you're going to see me every so often post these like bonus programs. That's what I'm going to call them. And they're going to be programs that'll help us to understand some current events, maybe in light of the readings or maybe in light of something what someone said and in light of what we teach here and what we believe. So if you remember, we are this week in the midst of Ezra. We're going to end the week with Haggai. The whole theme is going to be the temple. And I talked to you about the fact that Alexander Dugin, who is Vladimir Putin's philosopher, he basically has come out and he said that if you do not understand eschatology, you will not understand the current Mideast war. Now, whether or not that turns out to be the fact or not, we'll see. But that's what he teaches. Now, what is eschatology? Eschatology is the study of the end times. Well, let's go another step because just so happens, see, Putin watches what's going on in the world, especially in the Western world. Not Putin. Well, Putin does, obviously, but Alexander Dugin. And one of the important things to understand is the whole dispute between the Western world and Russia is not a dispute about land. Many people think it is. And so they think, well, Russia wants Ukraine. Well, Russia wants Ukraine not to be in NATO. That's one of the key things. And so Russia says no to NATO. That's where that whole invasion started, because from day one. And Russia wants Ukraine not to be in NATO. But also, Russia wants the nuclear weapons that surround Russia to be removed from Europe for pretty obvious reasons. And there is great concern, and this has been brought up by both sides, that we could be on our way to a nuclear war over these territorial things. But it is not a territorial dispute. It's a moral dispute. So remember what I said. The whole focus, Alexander Dugin said, would be on the Temple Mount. And I talked about how this week we're talking about the temple and the rebuilding of the temple. So even though that happened 2,600 years ago under the reign of Cyrus from Persia, we are looking at that same place as having a huge impact in the world and everything that comes out of it, which is the understanding, the moral understanding, and the theological understanding. Well, it just so happens that as I'm recording this today, none other than Alexander Dugin talks about this right now. He writes the following in his latest Substack. You can find him on Substack, and in his latest Substack, he says the following. Charlie, the name of the article is Charlie Kirk and the Cause of God. And in the midst of it, he said, Western modernity began with the claim that God does not exist and that religion is a fairy tale, myth, or even the opium of the people. Now, you know that him saying that is key because Alexander Dugin is Russian, and religion is the opium of the people comes from Karl Marx, who actually came out of Germany. He didn't have a real connection with Russia. The connection between communism and Russia started with Lenin and Stalin. So he's actually really just disputing the origin, the whole base of communism, what he says here. That doesn't mean that he's embracing capitalism, but to understand that the church itself has very big concerns about communism and capitalism. So that's something completely different. So then he continues, naturally, the devil was likewise declared non-existent. Several centuries passed that way. Now, what he's talking about there is the Enlightenment. When in the Enlightenment, there was this belief that God did not exist. In the 1800s, you had Friedrich Nietzsche, who was the one who declared that God is dead, in his powerful essay called The Madman. Fascinating. And I actually reenacted that for a confirmation class, to tell you the truth. It was fascinating to kind of teach this. These are the philosophies we're dealing with this in the world. We had a youth group that liked to do a lot of acting and stuff. And I was in Chelsea, Massachusetts, and there I was in the confirmation class, and I began, and all of a sudden one of the youth runs in and starts screaming right from the script of the short story, I see God, and continues the whole monologue that's in that short story. And then we talked about it. What did that mean? That was back when I was more creative. And then he says, then it turned out that the devil does indeed exist. Now, do keep this in mind. What have I said to you before? That at the base of this dispute is Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals, which basically says, do what you can to win the world the way you want it. And he doesn't say those words. That basically you could take that as the teaching. So there you have it. So there you have Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals. And what is the basis? It is dedicated to Lucifer as the first radical. So if you want to embrace Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals, embrace the idea of the devil and seek to emulate him. That is clearly the message. So he says, naturally, the devil was likewise declared non-existent. Several centuries passed that way. Then it turned out that the devil does indeed exist, Alexander Dugin continues, and there are his followers, banned in Russia, very interesting, banned in Russia but flourishing in the West. I don't know how they are banned in Russia. I don't know what that means, but they are banned in Russia, flourishing in the West. Vast networks and political regimes. It turns out there is an entire civilization of the devil. So here's what I want to explain to you, and we're going to continue reading this next paragraph. Okay? Remember, what's going on here is really a theological war between the East, basically Russia, I don't know if China's involved, and the West, which is Europe and the United States and Canada. So that's where your war is. It's not a war of territory. And now you see that there is a division in our country over the same lines. Now, what did I tell you? How does a small country take over a large country? Turn the people against each other. What do we see in our country? So you may want to look to see if there's foreign influence in this. So he says, it turns out that there is an entire civilization of the devil, and it is attacking the best among us at the hands of a frenzied Ukraine, but not only at those hands, at the hands of, these are his words, perverts, transgender people, migrants, furries, agents of the deep state. He says Marines, and it's not capitalized. I have a feeling that he's not referring to the United States Marine Corps. I think he has the wrong word there. He meant something else. But he says Marines. Drug dealers, journalists, liberal professors, officials, and millions of bloggers and fringe figures organized into countless NGOs. Something else I called about 22 years ago. The devil wages war on Christ and on those who remain faithful to him no matter what. So this is, again, what I'm saying. Now, do understand that this is what he's saying. Whether you agree with it or not is a different reality. What I'm saying is you want to understand what people are saying and how they are saying it. So when you see the media, for example, describe this current war between Russia and the Ukraine as a war for territory, it's not. It's a war over morality and theology. If you need to use the word, well, I'm not going to use the word. I was going to say the word religion, but it really isn't, because it's more theology. It's really anthropology. Alexander Dugin is presenting one reality of who we are as human beings, and he's saying the West does not believe the same thing. My issue here is always, well, how are you going to live with this reality in the world today? And the answer is actually we see that in the fact that what we're called to do is live the reality as servants of Christ. So we're not called to get into that dispute. We're called to focus on Christ and represent Christ in the midst of this. He says, but if the devil exists and fights Christ, then there must also be the one against whom the devil fights. This is very good and blessed news. It means that the sacrifices in this war are not in vain. What is the war? The war between Russia and the Ukraine. If the enemy of God fights against us, then we are on his side, on God's side. There it is right there, exactly what I said. This war is not a war for territory. It's a war over basically an understanding of those who believe in God and those who don't. But that doesn't mean we're part of this war, and that doesn't mean our enemy is Russia. Our focus is really, never mind who your enemy is. Jesus says to love your enemy. Our focus is Christ. And so we're really not in this war. We're called to be witnesses for Christ. So we're in a whole different side here. But keep this in mind. What is your role? Your role is to be a servant of Christ because you're called to be witnesses. What did I say to you before? Who wins the battle against evil? It is not you. It is God. Let God win. We talked earlier, Megan Kelly, she was asking about the St. Michael medal that Charlie Kirk wore. And I said, St. Michael, we know the St. Michael prayer, and St. Michael is in this battle, but it's a spiritual war. So how is our war to be fight? Spiritually. And you can find the tools of this battle in Ephesians 6:10. And go read it. Go look it up. It really is tools of keeping your focus on Christ and allowing those tools to protect you from the devil attacking you, and knowing that in Christ you are saved and called to live that way. So it's very important. So seeing this, and I encourage you to go back and read this, look up Alexander Dugin on some Substack. You're going to find his Substacks. And again, what are we looking at today? His original focus on this little territory that is the whole theme of this week's readings from Ezra and Haggai, the temple. And this is why the temple is so important. Okay, we'll talk to you again later. We're going to see these bonus ones. We don't necessarily show up every day, but we're going to see these bonus episodes pop up as I connect what's in the readings with what's going on. And I don't mean this as, there were some people that say, well, if you read the book of Revelation and you see this in the newspaper, this is what happens. I'm not going to do that. That's because that doesn't happen. But you can see, as I'm showing you, well, this whole story about the temple happened to 2,600 years ago. It's still in play today. Have yourself a blessed day. You can now leave a message for us, which we can air and discuss on this program. Just call 617-297-7452. That's 617-297-7452. 617-297-7452. Feel free to call, leave a comment, a question, or even feedback, and we may play it on the air. I can discuss your comment or question as well, so give that a try. 617-297-7452, 617-297-7452. Don't forget to subscribe to us on Patreon. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Check us out. Check what we have to offer. Previews of upcoming podcasts. Previews of upcoming columns over at CatholicAudiomedia.substack.com. Your ability to comment, make suggestions, even make suggestions in upcoming programs. Check us out. Patreon.com, Catholic Audio Media.